Part 1. The Fire Within. The hell you built yourself. They told you hell is a place beneath the ground, a realm of endless fire waiting for sinners. But that was only a story for children. The real hell is not somewhere you go after death. It's the one you live in before love. It's the one you build with your own hands, every time you choose fear over truth, every time you deny the call of your heart, every time you resist the flame that was meant to free you. Hell begins quietly. It doesn't roar. It hums beneath your skin like static. You wake up one morning and feel heavy, even before the day begins. You look at your life and realize that everything you built feels cold. The house, the job, the face you wear in front of others, they all look perfect, but something inside you is burning without light. You tell yourself you're fine, but your silence smells like smoke. This is how hell starts, not with fire from the sky, but with the slow burning of a soul that forgot how to love. Rumi said that love is the water of life, and the absence of love is thirst that no river can quench. That thirst becomes pain, and pain becomes anger, and anger becomes armor. You start defending yourself from the very thing that could heal you. You think the world has turned cruel, but it's not the world. It's the walls you've built around your heart. Those walls are made of fear, and fear is the real fire. It doesn't kill the body. It devours the spirit. The tragedy is that we worship our prisons. We polish our chains until they shine. We call them success, control, independence. But beneath the glitter of all that effort, the same wound keeps whispering, the one that says, "You are not enough." That whisper is the devil Rumi spoke of, not a creature with horns, but the voice that convinces you to hide from love, to mistrust softness, to seek safety instead of surrender. The longer you listen to it, the darker your world becomes, until even beauty feels threatening. Hell, Rumi would say, is not punishment. It's resistance. The fire does not come from outside. It's the friction of a heart fighting the truth. You suffer not because love has abandoned you, but because you keep pushing it away. The light knocks, again and again, and you pretend you don't hear it. You say you're too busy, too broken, too tired. But deep down you know, it's not the fire that hurts. It's your refusal to burn. There comes a point when the pain becomes too familiar to notice. You wear it like clothing. You think the heaviness is just life. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, you feel it. That strange heat under your ribs, the flame you've been running from, the truth that still wants you. You remember moments when you almost opened, when you almost let love in, and you realize that every time you turned away, you stepped deeper into your own fire. Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you. But before light enters, it burns. That burn is not cruelty. It's cleansing. It's the undoing of the false self, the one who pretends, who competes, who fears being seen, the one who would rather suffer in pride than heal in humility. That's the one who keeps hell alive. And yet, even that false self was born from love's absence, not evil. It's just a frightened child, clinging to ashes because it doesn't remember what gold feels like. The good news is this: hell is not eternal. It ends the moment you stop fighting, the moment you look your fear in the eyes and say, "I am ready." The moment you let the fire touch you instead of running from it. Because the fire was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to reveal you. Love hides inside it, waiting for you to surrender. When you stop resisting, the flames soften, and what felt like punishment turns into light. So ask yourself, What if this pain you're in is not hell, but the doorway out of it? What if the fire that surrounds you is not against you, but for you? What if the burning is love, trying to free you from the walls you built? The truth is simple. The only hell that exists is the one where love has been exiled, and the only way out is to invite it back in. If these words reached the part of you that's tired of running, let them stay. Let the flame remind you that you were never meant to live cold. Love is not a comfort, it's a fire, and you are made of light. If this spoke to you, if it stirred something quiet and bright within, let it breathe beyond you. Share it. Leave a comment. Subscribe. Not for numbers, but to keep the circle of light alive, because somewhere, someone else is still in their own fire, waiting to remember that even in the heat of hell, love is already there, calling them home. Part 2. The lie you worship. You don't need to look far to find the lie. You carry it inside you. It's the voice that says, "I am not enough," and yet demands the world to prove otherwise. It's the one that whispers that love must be earned, that worth must be achieved, that peace is something distant, waiting at the end of effort. You build your life around that lie until it becomes your God. You worship it every day without knowing. Every anxious thought, every mask, every desperate plan, all prayers to the same false altar. Rumi once wrote, "You have spent your life looking for God. Why not look for the one who is looking?" He meant this, that most people are not worshiping God at all. They are worshiping their fear. They are bowing to the false self that trembles at the thought of disappearing. The ego builds its own religion, and its only commandment is this: survive. It does not care about truth or freedom. It only wants to continue existing, even if that existence is suffering. So you wake up every morning and kneel before invisible idols. They are not carved from stone, but from thought. You pray to success, to validation, to control. You whisper offerings to approval, to reputation, to image. You think you are chasing happiness, but what you are really protecting is the mask that hides your pain. The tragedy is that this mask becomes so familiar, you begin to call it me. And when the world threatens it, when someone sees too deeply, when love gets too close, you call that threat hell. But it's not hell. It's truth trying to touch you. The lie is seductive because it promises safety. It tells you that if you just work hard enough, believe enough, look holy enough, you'll finally be worthy. It promises that love will come when you are perfect. But perfection is a moving target. You chase it across years, decades, lifetimes, and still the voice says, "Not yet." You bow deeper, pray harder, give more of yourself away, and the altar grows taller. What you don't realize is that you're feeding a fire that will never be full. The ego's hunger cannot be satisfied. It only knows how to consume. Rumi said, "The false self is an idol. Break it." But breaking it feels like death. That's why people cling to the lie, because the truth is terrifying. The truth says you were never separate from God, never unworthy, never unloved. But if that is true, then everything you built to prove yourself becomes meaningless. The crowns, the struggles, the stories, gone. And without them, who are you? The mind panics at that question. It would rather live in chains than face its own emptiness. Hell, then, is not a punishment from above. It is the temple where you pray to yourself. The endless ritual of trying to fix what was never broken. You light candles for your image. You bow before your reflection, and the more you worship it, the smaller you become. You mistake control for faith and comfort for love. But love is not comfort. Love dismantles your altars. It tears down the idols and leaves you standing naked in the smoke. When that happens, you'll feel lost. You'll think God has abandoned you. But that emptiness is not abandonment. It's liberation. It's the silence that comes when the lie finally stops speaking. You will want to run back to the noise, to rebuild the altar. But if you can stay in that silence long enough, you will hear something beneath it. A different voice, softer, older, truer. The one that has always been calling you by your real name. Rumi wrote, "Knock, and he will open the door. Vanish, and he will make you shine like the sun." The lie you worship cannot survive that vanishing. It will scream. It will tell you that you are losing everything. But what you are really losing is the distance between you and the divine. The fire that once burned as punishment becomes a lantern. The smoke clears, and you see what was hidden all along. There was never a wall between you and God, only the shadow of your own belief in separation. When you understand that, something inside you breaks open. You stop praying for things to change and start praying to see clearly. You realize that worship was never about begging the sky for miracles. It was about dissolving into what was already sacred. The true prayer is not made of words. It is the moment you stop pretending. So ask yourself, what do you worship? What do you sacrifice your peace for every day? Whose approval are you still chasing? If the answer is anything less than love itself, then you are still in the temple of the lie. And the only way out is through surrender. Not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of awakening. The fire of truth will come for your idols. Let it. It will not destroy you. It will free you. Because when the false self burns, the real one begins to breathe. If these words found a place in you, if you felt the crack of recognition somewhere beneath the ribs, stay with it. Let the old altar fall. Let the smoke rise. And if this light touched you, share it. Leave a word below, a spark, a sign that you are walking this path too. Subscribe if you wish, not for me, but to keep the flame alive, so that others still trapped in their own temples of illusion might see the glow and find their way home. Part 3. When love knocks and you run. You said you wanted love. You prayed for it. You begged the sky to send it, to heal you, to make the loneliness end. But when love finally came, you didn't open the door. You ran. No one tells you that love rarely arrives as comfort. It does not come dressed in safety or calm. It comes like thunder, like a storm that shakes everything you thought was stable. It demands the death of your certainty, the burning of your masks, the surrender of your control. That's why when it knocks, most people hide. Because love, the real kind, doesn't ask you to add anything to yourself. It asks you to lose everything that isn't real. At first, love looks like a blessing. It feels like sunlight after years of winter. You open your arms, and the warmth fills you until your chest can barely contain it. You start to believe you've been saved. But soon, the light begins to show its other face. It starts revealing the shadows you've spent a lifetime ignoring. Your fears, your pride, your wounds. Every wall you've built begins to tremble. Every defense you trusted starts to crack. That's when the panic comes. You tell yourself, this can't be love. Love shouldn't hurt, shouldn't confuse, shouldn't terrify. But that's the lie of the sleeping soul. Love hurts because it touches what is still closed. It terrifies because it shows you the truth of your smallness. It confuses because it does not follow the logic of your ego. Love does not arrive to decorate your life. It arrives to burn it down, to reveal the house you built on fear and call it holy. Rumi said, "Love is the flame which, when it blazes, burns away everything except the eternal beloved." You thought you wanted romance, affection, someone to hold you, but what you truly wanted was transformation. And transformation is never gentle. It is the collapse of everything false. It is the moment your identity begins to die and your soul starts to remember who it is. So love comes like a test. It asks, can you bear to be seen completely? Can you let someone look into your eyes and see through every story, every wound, every pretense? Can you stand naked before the mirror of truth and not turn away? Most can't. Most run back to the safety of distraction, to the comfort of shallow affection, to the numbness that keeps them from burning. Because the fire of love asks too much. It asks for you, but running never saves you. It only deepens the hunger, because no matter how far you go, the echo of that knock follows you. It waits behind every temporary pleasure, every false peace. It calls to you in the quiet moments, reminding you that you turned away from your own awakening. The one who knocked was not another person. It was your soul, wearing the face of love, begging to be remembered. You cannot escape it forever. One day, when the noise fades, it will return. The same warmth, the same trembling, the same call. And this time, if you are ready, you won't run. You'll open the door and let the fire in. You'll let it burn what it must burn, knowing that what it destroys is not you. It's the shell you've been mistaking for life. There is a moment in the center of that burning when fear dissolves. You realize that the pain you felt was not love's cruelty. It was your own resistance being torn away. You see that love was never the enemy, it was the medicine, and you were the wound refusing to heal. You begin to laugh through the tears because you finally understand. This is what you've been asking for all along. Not comfort, not certainty, but truth. And when you stop running, something miraculous happens. The same fire that once terrified you begins to glow softly. The same eyes that once exposed you now feel like home. Love stops being a storm outside your door and becomes the light that lives inside your chest. The beloved is no longer a visitor. It is your reflection. Rumi said, "The minute I heard my first love story, I started looking for you, not knowing how blind that was. Lovers don't finally meet somewhere. They're in each other all along." That is the secret the running soul forgets. The love you fear is your own heart calling you back. You can flee across the world, bury yourself in noise, but wherever you go, you carry the doorway within you. And one day, you will have to walk through it. So if love has found you, if it's knocking, and you feel that trembling in your chest, do not run this time. Do not hide behind the walls of reason or fear. Let it in. Let it wreck you. Let it rebuild you, because the one who walks out of that fire will not be the one who entered. It will be the one you were always meant to become. If these words stirred something inside you, if you recognize the echo of that knock, then maybe this is your moment to stop running. Let the fire find you. And if it did, share it. Leave a word, a spark, a reflection. Subscribe if you wish, not for the algorithm, but to keep this flame alive. Somewhere, another heart is still running from its own light, and your voice might be the one that helps it turn back home. Part 4. The fire is not your enemy. There comes a moment when the running stops, not because you've found peace yet, but because exhaustion has become holy. You've burned through every escape, chased every distraction, prayed for the fire to end, and it hasn't. The heat still rises from inside you, steady and merciless. But somewhere between the cries and the silence, something begins to change. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start whispering, "What is this trying to show me?" That question is the turning point. It's the doorway between torment and transformation. You begin to see that the fire you cursed was never your enemy. It was your teacher. It came not to punish, but to purify. The same flame that once terrified you now starts to reveal its hidden mercy. It burns, yes, but not to destroy, to uncover. The pain that once felt unbearable begins to shimmer with meaning. You realize that the heat is not killing you. It's burning away everything that isn't you. Rumi said, "Do not run from the fire, let it melt you." He knew what most people never learn, that what we call suffering is often just love wearing its fiercest face. Every trial, every loss, every heartbreak is the beloved in disguise, testing the walls of your soul, seeing which ones are ready to fall. When love wants to remake you, it sends fire, not comfort, and if you are brave enough to stand in it, you will see that it burns only what was false. At first, it feels cruel. The mind cannot understand why it must lose what it loves. It clings to the ashes of old stories, repeating, "This was my life. This was my heart." But the fire is patient. It waits until even grief becomes still, until your resistance softens, until you can finally see that what you lost was never truly yours. It was borrowed illusion, temporary identity, a mask that could not survive the truth. And then, something remarkable happens. The flames stop roaring. The heat no longer feels like pain. It feels like cleansing. You begin to feel light, as if the weight of years has lifted off your chest. The smoke clears, and you can breathe again. Not the shallow breath of fear, but the full, steady rhythm of being alive. You realize the fire didn't take anything from you. It gave you space. Space to feel, to see, to become. The more you surrender, the gentler the fire becomes. It starts to glow instead of burn. It moves through you like warmth instead of punishment. You start to understand that it was never sent to break you. It was sent to prepare you. Like gold in the furnace, you had to face the heat to shine. Like clay in the kiln, you had to be tempered to hold the light. The fire wasn't the end of your story. It was the shaping of your soul. Rumi wrote, "Be patient where you sit in the dark. The dawn is coming." You feel that now, not as hope, but as knowing. The dawn is not outside you. It's growing quietly beneath your ribs. The pain that once blinded you now lights your way. You see beauty where you once saw only loss. You feel gratitude for what broke you, because it forced you to meet yourself. You begin to sense that maybe everything was love all along, even the fire, even the ashes. And when you look back, you see the pattern. Every fall led you here. Every closed door was protection. Every burn was a revelation. The universe was never against you. It was only removing what stood between you and your own light. What you called destruction was, in truth, healing. What you thought was abandonment was the beloved clearing space to enter. The fear that once ruled you begins to fade. You no longer tremble before the flame. You start to see that love and fire are the same force. One destroys illusions, the other creates truth. Together, they forge you into something real. You finally understand that the fire is not outside, it's within. It's the divine heartbeat pulsing through your transformation. And now, when new flames rise, when life tests you again, you no longer beg for escape. You whisper, "Show me what I still need to see." That is freedom. That is trust. The fire can no longer hurt you because you have learned to walk inside it. So if you are burning, stay still. Do not run. Let the flames speak. Let them tell you what they came for. Because when they finish their work, you will not be ashes. You will be light. If these words reached you while you were still in the heat, let them be a hand through the fire. And when you rise, softer, clearer, freer, share the warmth. Leave a spark, a word, a sign that you've seen the truth. Subscribe if you wish, not as a gesture to me, but as an act of remembrance that even when the world burns, the soul is untouched, and love was never your enemy. Part 5. When the false self burns, there is a moment when the fire finally reaches the core. It no longer dances around the edges of your pain. It moves straight into the heart of who you think you are, and there is nowhere left to hide. This is the death Rumi spoke of. Not the death of the body, but the death of the false self. It is not gentle. It does not ask permission. It comes when the time is right, when all your defenses have collapsed, when the last illusion of control has turned to ash. You feel it first as a quiet panic. Something in you knows what's coming. The thoughts start to tremble. The old patterns begin to dissolve. Every story you've told about yourself, the strong one, the victim, the believer, the skeptic, begins to burn in the same flame. The ego fights for its life. It will say anything to survive. It will tell you that without it, you'll disappear. It will whisper that you are losing everything. And in a way, you are. But what you're losing is what was never real. Rumi wrote, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form." He wasn't talking about people or possessions. He meant the self, the one you've spent a lifetime protecting, the one that says, "I know who I am." That voice begins to crumble in the fire, and in its place, silence. A silence so vast it feels like death. But it isn't. It's the space where truth begins to breathe. The false self doesn't die easily. It fights with the weapons of memory. It brings back every wound, every betrayal, every fear, hoping to keep the fire fed with guilt and blame. But the flame has no interest in stories. It burns through them all, leaving only what cannot be destroyed. It doesn't care about your name, your history, your identity. It only wants what's real, and what's real doesn't burn. It glows. At first, it feels unbearable. You feel stripped, raw, emptied. You look for something familiar to hold on to, but everything that used to define you has vanished. The achievements, the failures, even your pain, gone. You stand naked in front of existence with nothing left to offer, nothing left to hide. And in that nakedness, for the first time, you are free. You start to understand that what's dying was never you. It was the mask that blocked the light. The pain you feel is the sound of that mask cracking open. Rumi said, "The wound is where the light enters you." But sometimes the wound is not a single cut. It's your entire life splitting open. The light doesn't enter gently. It floods you. It blinds you. It burns through every corner where you've hidden. And though you think you cannot bear it, you can. Because this light is what you've been made of all along. Slowly, something begins to shift. The pain turns into stillness. The fear begins to quiet. You realize the fire didn't come to end you. It came to reveal you. Beneath the ashes, you feel it. A presence, a calm so deep it doesn't belong to the mind. The I that was fighting is gone, but something larger is watching. Something eternal. You realize that you are still here, but not the you who suffered. The witness remains, untouched by flame. And that's when the paradox becomes clear. What burns, dies. What is real, survives. The false self screams and fades, but what remains after the burning is peace. Not the fragile peace of comfort, but the fierce peace of truth. You understand what Rumi meant when he said, "I died as mineral and became a plant. I died as plant and rose to animal. I died as animal and became human. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying?" The burning is the same cycle. Each death is a birth. Each end is a doorway. You start to feel gratitude for the fire. You see that it was the only thing strong enough to free you. You were never being punished. You were being purified. Every tear was a baptism. Every loss a liberation. Every fall a flight in disguise. You begin to see that you were never meant to survive as the person you thought you were. You were meant to awaken as the soul that has no name. And now, when you look at the ashes of your old self, you don't feel sorrow. You feel reverence. You whisper thank you to the flame, to the pain, to the divine cruelty that turned out to be mercy. You realize that the fire didn't destroy you. It destroyed everything that kept you from knowing who you are. So if you find yourself burning, if everything you once trusted is falling apart, do not despair. You are not being undone. You are being revealed. The false self burns so the real one can rise. Let it burn. Let it end, because what will remain after the fire will not be fear. It will be light. If these words met you in your own burning, let them stay. Let them breathe in your silence. And when the smoke clears, share your light. Leave a spark, a comment, a whisper. Subscribe if you wish, not as a habit, but as a vow to remember that this fire is sacred. Because one day, someone else will be standing in their own flames, trembling, and they'll need to hear that what burns is not the end. It's the beginning. Part 6. The moment of surrender. At some point, the struggle ends, not because you've won, but because you've run out of ways to resist. The fight that has carried you for so long, the fight to understand, to control, to hold your world together, simply collapses. The hands that clutched, the mind that demanded, the heart that refused to trust, all of it grows quiet. You fall to your knees, not out of defeat, but out of exhaustion. And for the first time, you don't reach for anything. You just breathe. That breath is the beginning of surrender. Surrender doesn't look holy at first. It looks like breaking. It looks like crying on the floor with no prayer left to say. It looks like silence after every why has been spoken into the dark. But that silence, that unbearable stillness, is where grace enters. The mind will tell you this is the end, but something deeper knows it's the beginning. Because surrender is not losing the fight. It's realizing there was never a fight to begin with. Rumi said, "Give up to grace. The ocean takes care of each wave until it reaches the shore." You begin to feel that truth. The current that once terrified you now feels like a mother's hands. You sense that you were never steering anything. Life was always carrying you, even when you thought you were lost. The chaos, the pain, the burning, they weren't obstacles. They were the river guiding you home. In surrender, time slows. The world that once demanded your constant effort begins to soften around the edges. You no longer rush to fix or to plan. You start to trust the pauses, the delays, the silences. The need to know what's next fades, replaced by a strange calm that doesn't depend on answers. You realize that control was never peace. It was fear wearing a mask of power. And fear cannot exist where trust begins. There's a sacred quiet that comes when you finally stop running from what is. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or revelation. It just seeps in, like light through cracks in a ruined wall. You sit inside that light and realize you've been here before, many times, but never long enough to recognize it. The pain that used to define you is gone. The questions that used to consume you dissolve into stillness. You don't feel fixed, you feel free. You start to understand that surrender is not something you do. It's something that happens when you've been undone. It's grace taking over where effort ends. It's the river saying, "You've struggled enough. Let me carry you now." You can feel it in your breath, softer, deeper, no longer forced. Each inhale is a gift. Each exhale, a letting go. And then, in the center of that peace, something extraordinary happens. The same fire that once burned you becomes light. The same storm that once broke you becomes rhythm. You feel the presence of something vast and loving, not above you, but within you. It doesn't speak in words. It speaks in stillness. It feels like a pulse under your ribs, ancient and infinite. You realize that what you were calling God was never outside of you. It was the silence waiting for your surrender. Rumi said, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." You feel that line move through you like a whisper from eternity. The I that fought so hard to survive has disappeared, and what remains doesn't need a name. It watches. It breathes. It loves. The world still moves, but you no longer need to manage it. You begin to trust the intelligence behind everything, the same force that turns ashes into soil and rivers into oceans. This is the moment of surrender, the holy stillness after the fire. Nothing to prove, nothing to defend, nothing to control, just life, happening through you instead of to you. You finally understand that peace was never something to find. It was what remained when you stopped resisting what is. And so you sit there, breathing in the quiet, feeling the last traces of smoke fade from your chest. The air tastes different now, lighter, cleaner, alive. The same world surrounds you, but you see it with new eyes. Every sound feels sacred. Every movement feels divine. Even the pain that once defined you now glows with purpose. You whisper to the silence, "Thank you." And for the first time, you mean it. If these words found you in your own moment of surrender, let them stay. Let them remind you that this softness is not weakness. It's strength finally resting. And when you're ready, share that peace. Leave a sign, a spark, a whisper below. Subscribe if you wish, not for numbers, but as an offering to the stillness itself. Because somewhere, Someone is still fighting their river, and your quiet might help them let go. Part 7. The light behind the smoke. When the smoke begins to lift, you notice how quiet everything has become. The fire is gone, the ashes have settled, and there's a strange clarity in the air. For the first time in a long time, nothing hurts. You sit in the silence, unsure whether it's peace or emptiness, and then you realize it's both. The world hasn't changed, but you have. The noise that used to fill every corner of your mind has vanished. What remains is stillness. And beneath that stillness, something is shining. At first, it feels too gentle to believe. After so much chaos, so much burning, this calm feels foreign. You almost miss the storm because it was proof that you were alive. But as the smoke clears, you see that life has never left. It was simply hidden behind the noise, waiting for you to stop fighting. You begin to notice small things again. The rhythm of your breath, the softness of light on your skin, the quiet pulse of your own existence. Every detail feels new, like the world has been washed clean. You remember how certain you once were that you were being punished, how sure you were that the fire was hell, that God had turned his face away. But now, standing in the aftermath, you see that it was never punishment. It was purification. The darkness wasn't proof of abandonment. It was proof of presence, the kind that stays even when everything else disappears. You were never outside of love. You were simply unable to see through the smoke. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." You thought that meant healing would come after the pain, but now you understand. The light was already there, even in the burning. It was hidden inside the wound, shining from the center of what hurt the most. The fire didn't block the light, it revealed it. The pain didn't separate you from love, it introduced you to it. You start to see how illusion works. Hell was never a place. It was a perception. It was the fog of fear that made you mistake your own resistance for divine wrath. You were holding the door closed, all while begging for it to open. You were asking for love, but refusing to let it touch you. And God, patient beyond words, waited for you to tire of the struggle, waited for the smoke to clear, waited for you to remember that the door was never locked. As this realization settles, the world begins to glow. Not in a dramatic way, but in that quiet, sacred way that ordinary things start to feel holy. The air itself feels kind. The sound of your heartbeat feels like prayer. The pain that once felt senseless now looks like grace in disguise. You see that nothing was ever wasted. Every tear was instruction. Every loss was direction. Every burn was love reshaping you into someone who could finally see. Rumi wrote, "Don't turn away. Keep your gaze on the bandaged place. That's where the light enters you." You realize now that this light isn't something new. It's the same light that's been following you since the beginning, through every mistake, through every moment of despair. You just couldn't see it through the smoke. The light was patient. It never left. It waited behind every fall, every silence, every prayer that felt unanswered. The illusion breaks completely when you understand this. God was never punishing you. He was holding you, waiting for you to let go of everything that kept you blind. The hell you feared was your own misunderstanding. And the moment you stopped resisting, the smoke began to rise, revealing what had always been there, a love too vast to name. And now you know, heaven and hell were never destinations. They were states of seeing. When you see through fear, the world becomes fire. When you see through love, the same world becomes light. Nothing external changed, only your eyes did. So you sit there, breathing in the quiet after the storm. The air feels sacred, the silence alive. You look around at what remains, not ruins, but clarity. The smoke thins, and the horizon opens. You realize that what you once called the end was actually the clearing of your vision. And in that clear vision, everything, even pain, shines with the same light. If you've come this far, if the smoke in your own heart has begun to clear, then stay in this stillness for a while. Don't rush to fill it. Don't reach for the old stories. Let the light settle. Let it remind you that even when everything seemed lost, you were being guided here to this simple, luminous truth. And if this spoke to you, if the light behind your own smoke began to show itself, leave a sign, a word, a whisper, a spark. Subscribe if you wish, not for me, but as a way of saying yes to the light that never left you, because someone else is still inside their fire, and your glow might help them find the way out. Part 8, the reunion. There comes a moment when you stop searching, not because you've given up, but because you finally understand that what you were looking for has never been missing. You feel it one morning, a warmth rising in your chest for no reason at all. No event, no promise, no miracle, just a quiet, steady pulse. And in that pulse, you recognize something ancient, something that has always been with you, even when you thought you were lost. It's love, not the kind that visits and leaves, but the kind that never needed to arrive. The reunion doesn't happen with trumpets or angels. It happens in silence. It happens when your mind grows tired of naming, when your heart grows tired of chasing. It happens when you sit in the middle of your own life, no longer asking it to be different. You breathe, and the breath feels like prayer. You close your eyes, and the darkness feels like home. You realize you're no longer searching for God, you're remembering Him. Rumi said, "What you seek is seeking you." You've heard that before, but now it makes sense. All those years of running, of falling, of burning, they weren't you moving toward the divine. They were the divine moving through you, breaking you open so that this moment could exist. Every heartbreak was a doorway. Every silence was a hand pulling you closer. The reunion isn't a meeting between two things. It's the realization that there were never two. You begin to feel it in everything, in the way sunlight touches a wall, in the sound of wind through leaves, in the way strangers smile without knowing why. Love no longer feels like an emotion. It feels like the substance of reality itself. It's in the breath, in the heartbeat, in the quiet spaces between words. You understand now what Rumi meant when he said, "I am not a drop in the ocean. I am the entire ocean in a drop." You are not part of love. You are love remembering itself. There's a sweetness in this awareness, but also a sacred humility. You see that everything that ever hurt you was part of the same hand that now holds you. You see that every person who entered your life, the ones who stayed, the ones who left, were all messengers, mirrors reflecting the same light back to you. You forgive them all, not as an act of will, but as a natural response to clarity. You see that there was never anything to forgive. Everyone was learning how to love, just like you. And now, as you sit in the stillness, you can feel it. That love is not a feeling that rises and falls. It's a presence. It doesn't come and go. It doesn't ask. It doesn't take. It simply is. It fills you from the inside until there's no difference between you and the light around you. You begin to realize that this is what all the burning was for. The fire didn't come to destroy you. It came to reveal the space where love could finally live. Rumi said, "I was raw, then I was cooked, then I was burned." You understand those words now? You see that love needed your breaking to enter fully. It needed your surrender to breathe through you. And now, you no longer need to search for meaning. Meaning flows through you, effortlessly, like breath. You no longer need to chase beauty. Everything you see glows with it. The reunion feels like recognition. It's the moment you look at the sky and realize it's been waiting for you to notice it again. The moment you touch your own heart and feel it beating not for survival, but for song. You feel connected to everything, the stars, the dust, the silence between them. You no longer ask where heaven is, because you can feel it in your hands, in your breath, in the space between heartbeats. And when you try to put it into words, you realize you can't, because words belong to the world of separation, and this is the world of union. You simply sit in it, radiant, weightless, whole. You are the lover and the beloved, the prayer and the flame, the silence and the sound, the beginning and the return. If this light has found you, if you felt something move in your chest as you read these words, then maybe this is your own reunion, not with another, but with yourself. Stay with it. Don't rush back to thought. Let it fill you. Let it breathe you. And when you're ready, leave a trace, a word, a spark, a whisper below. Subscribe if you wish, not as a gesture to me, but as a small act of love, a way of keeping the flame alive for someone who hasn't yet remembered that the reunion was never waiting in the future. It was always happening now. Part 9. Heaven was never elsewhere. You always thought heaven was somewhere far away, a reward, a destination, a promise waiting beyond the end of all this. You looked to the sky for signs, prayed to be taken somewhere better, somewhere cleaner, softer, untouched by pain. But now, after all the fire and silence, after all the dying and returning, you see what the mystics meant when they said heaven is not a place. Heaven is the absence of the one who searches for it. The moment the eye dissolves, the gates open, not in the clouds, but in your chest. The walls that once divided sacred from ordinary begin to disappear. You feel it in your breath. How simple it is. How divine it has always been. The same air that fills your lungs is the same breath that moves the stars. You realize that heaven was never waiting for you. It was always inside you, hidden beneath layers of fear, guilt, and longing. It was waiting for your eyes to clear, for your heart to stop demanding more, for your mind to stop calling itself separate. Rumi said, "Stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion." You understand now. Heaven is not a reward for the righteous. It is the recognition of your vastness. The moment you stop identifying with the small, trembling self that believes it must earn love, you remember that you were never outside it. Heaven was never elsewhere. It was here, underneath every breath, behind every heartbreak, within every silence that once frightened you. You begin to see how illusion kept you wandering. You thought heaven was there and you were here. You thought God was beyond reach. Love was something to achieve, and peace was something to find. But separation was the dream. You wake up from it, and suddenly everything glows, even the ordinary things. The sound of footsteps, the taste of water, the warmth of light across a wall. All of it hums with the same quiet perfection. The world hasn't changed. You have. This is what the mystics meant when they said that the end of the path is the beginning. The self that searched for heaven vanishes, and what remains is heaven looking through your eyes. You see that the whole journey, the fire, the loss, the surrender, was never about reaching somewhere new. It was about dissolving everything that made you believe you were not already home. In this awareness, peace is no longer fragile. It doesn't depend on outcomes, on people, on moments of joy. It breathes on its own. You could lose everything tomorrow and still feel complete, because nothing real can be taken. The body moves, the mind thinks, the heart feels, but beneath it all, there is a vast stillness that holds everything, a presence that neither begins nor ends. That is heaven. That is love without opposite, Rumi said. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. You understand that now? Words become unnecessary. Even thought begins to fade. You no longer need explanations, because the mystery itself feels like home. You start to laugh softly at how long you searched for what was already here. The distance was never real. The path was a circle that brought you back to the center, to the simple awareness of being. You see now that heaven isn't about escape, it's about recognition. It's the moment you stop asking for something more and finally realize that this breath, this heartbeat, this moment is already enough. There is no elsewhere. There is only this, endlessly unfolding. Heaven was never waiting for you to die. It was waiting for you to wake up. And so you sit quietly, maybe smiling, maybe crying, but with a kind of joy that has no reason. The air feels holy. The silence feels alive. You can feel the pulse of existence moving through everything, through you, through the sky, through the ground beneath your feet. Nothing is separate anymore. Even the shadows are made of light. If you've come this far, if something in you has begun to glimpse this truth, then let it settle. Don't rush back to the noise. Let the recognition root itself in you. Because once you see it, even for a moment, you can never be fully lost again. Heaven is not waiting. It's breathing with you right now. And if this moment touched you, if you felt a spark of that stillness awaken in your heart, leave a sign, a word, a whisper, a light. Subscribe if you wish, not as a ritual, but as remembrance, a way of saying yes to the heaven already here. Because someone else is still looking for it in the sky, not realizing it has always been glowing inside them. Part 10. The flame that becomes prayer. There comes a time when even gratitude becomes wordless. When you've thanked the fire, thanked the silence, thanked the love that broke you open, and still, the heart keeps bowing deeper. You no longer know who is praying and who is being prayed to. The boundary between the voice and the listening disappears. Only light remains, only breath, only presence. This is not peace as you once imagined it. Fragile, quiet, easily disturbed. This is the peace that stands at the center of all storms. The peace that doesn't depend on calm, because it is deeper than calm. It's the stillness that holds movement, the silence that carries every sound. You feel it now. Vast, unshakable, radiant. The world keeps moving, but something inside you has stopped. You have become the flame itself. Rumi said, "I have been burnt so completely, I can no longer distinguish myself from the flame." That is where you are now. The fire that once frightened you has turned into devotion. It no longer burns to destroy. It burns to worship. Every breath you take is a bow. Every heartbeat is a wordless yes. The light no longer comes from outside. It rises from within, a steady glow that touches everything around you without effort, without intention. You look at your own hands and see the miracle of their existence. You look at the sky and see the same light moving there. You look at strangers and see yourself. There is no separation left. The world you once tried to escape has become holy ground. Every sound, every shadow, every imperfection, sacred. There is nowhere to go. There is nothing to become. The prayer is already happening. You are the prayer. You understand now that the purpose of all suffering was not to make you worthy, but to make you open. Love was never trying to find you. It was trying to flow through you, to live as you. You were the vessel being shaped by the heat of divine patience. And now, all that remains is the simplicity of being. You no longer seek the light. You shine it. In this stillness, you can feel the heartbeat of the universe. It moves gently, rhythmically, like breath passing through eternity. You sense that every creature, every atom, every flame is part of that same great pulse. Nothing is outside it. Nothing is lost. You realize that the prayer you use to speak with words has become the way you exist. Walking, breathing, smiling, even in silence. All of it is prayer now. Rumi said, "I am the prayer. I am the flame. I am the burning." You finally understand that he was never speaking in metaphor. He was describing this, the moment when love consumes the last trace of separation and turns being into offering. You can feel it, not as thought, but as radiance, as warmth moving from your center outward, touching everything, blessing everything. You don't need to name it anymore. You simply live it. And now you see the beauty of it all, that there was never a journey to God. There was only God remembering himself through your story. The fire, the pain, the loss, the surrender, all of it was love folding back into itself like waves returning to the sea. The seeker and the sought were one flame all along, so you stand there, or sit, or lie in silence, and everything around you glows. The air feels golden. The shadows feel kind. You realize that nothing has changed, and yet everything has. The world is still the same, but now it feels alive with the sacred. Every heartbeat is an amen. Every breath is a verse. You are no longer praying. You have become the prayer. If these words met you here, at the quiet edge of your own becoming, let them stay. Let them remind you that you are already light, already whole, already home. And if the flame within you feels alive, even a little, share it. Leave a trace, a word, a spark, a reflection. Subscribe if you wish, not as habit, but as an act of devotion, to keep this circle of fire alive, because somewhere, another soul is still standing in their own darkness, not knowing yet that they too are the flame, the prayer, and the light that never ends.